Like to follow along at home, I'm in Shift, page 1, introduction. The real estate market has shifted drastically and dramatically. Sales volume and the number of transactions have dropped significantly. Now, this book was written in 2008, 2009. So I want you to think about what time period is Gary Keller talking about when he's sharing this. Inventory has reached an all-time high. Buyers have never been more reluctant. Fear is rampant. Now, when he says fear is rampant, he's not necessarily talking about buyers and sellers. He's talking about you guys, talking about real estate agents. He's talking about owners of real estate companies. He's talking about people like me and people like you. Anxiety is high. Yeah. Guilty. And people are getting out of the business left and right. Sound familiar? Sure it does. The year was 1979, and that's what was happening all around me. I was 22 years old, new to the industry and new to Austin. You know, when I talk to real estate agents who are getting into the business and I hear things like, I'm too young. I don't know anybody. And they're giving me reasons why it's not working. I go back and I think about people like Gary Keller, 22 years old. Guys realize he owns the largest, most successful real estate company in the world, right? Right? Okay. And at one point he was 22 years old, new to the business, and in a new city where he didn't know anyone. I basically knew nothing and no one, and still I sold 6 houses my first month in the business. Then the market collapsed. Interest rates soared to over 18%. The marketplace fell into chaos. And I didn't close a sale for 5 straight months. By Christmas, I was 6 months into my real estate career and broke. My dad offered to help based on my growing database and the business I had in the pipeline. Now, aside, this is funny. His database, guys, you have to understand it was a 3x5 index card box, okay? It wasn't Command. He loaned me $500 to keep me going. The very next day, my dad's faith in me was validated, and I wrote a contract on a home for Jack and Dorothy Saul. Ultimately, my hard work paid off, and I ended my first 12 months hitting all of my financial goals. 8 years later. Fast forward to 1987, and it happened again. This time, the government changed tax laws, which had a disastrous effect. This time, it's kind of like that time. The market shifted. Seemingly overnight, the listing inventory went through the roof. Sales transactions fell to the floor, and our local real estate board went from over 5,000 members to below 2,000. Panic and confusion reigned. It felt like everybody was running helter-skelter, looking for shelter, but finding no place to hide. There was no escaping the shift. By this time in my career, I started my own real estate company, and we had become the 10th largest in the market. And when he says the market, he's talking about Austin, Texas, right? 10th largest. Just for comparison, I want to remind you guys that you're number 1 in your market, all right? Keller Williams Coral Springs, number 1 in market share in your market. At this point in his career, he had grown to 10th largest in his market. By comparison, you're doing much better than Gary Keller was. You guys hearing me? Okay. My competitors were going bankrupt all around me, and the number of agents in my office abruptly dropped from more than 70 to below 40. To make matters worse, in the midst of getting my feet back under me and reestablishing my profit margin, a new competitor entered the picture. 5 of my top 10 associates and my entire administrative staff walked out the door. My business world was being assaulted from all sides. As bad as my first market shift experience was as an agent, it was even more devastating as an owner. In the end, I found my way through this shift just as I had before. And once again, I not only survived, I thrived and ultimately emerged stronger, more capable than ever. Less than 2 years after the shift, our company became #1 in our market, a position never to be relinquished. Are you facing a shift? If you are, you shouldn't be surprised. History repeats itself. This is not the first time real estate professionals have been in this position. What's happening to you today has happened before and is destined to happen again. Real estate markets shift. They always have and always will. And the business goes on. As bleak as things can look during shifts, when I look back, I believe they've served as the genesis for everything I've become and the catalyst for all that I've achieved. In fact, I've come to see them as opportunities, and so can you. Now, how many of you for the first time are hearing this story? Most everybody, right? Yeah, right? Yeah, and I don't want you to hear panic, doom, gloom. I don't want you to worry. I don't want you to be afraid. What I want you to hear is hope. What I want you to hear is we were built for this. Keller Williams was created, the company was started in a shift. We grew from one office, Market Center #1, Southwest Texas Market Center. It's there today in Austin, Texas. You can go visit. They have over 1,000 agents in the office. It's still there. And there's over 950 market centers in the United States and 58 countries. Largest real estate company the world's ever seen. We were built for this. In the last market shift in 2006, 7, 8, 9, and 10, we went from top 5 real estate companies in the world to #1. We've never given that up. We're today the largest real estate company the world has ever seen. #1 in units closed, #1 in closed volume, and that growth happened during the last shift. It'll happen again. Now, my story is kind of similar, and a few of you have heard this, and then I think most of you haven't. I got my real estate license in 2002, not because I wanted to, but because my wife thought it would be a good idea. And I honestly didn't want to get my license, Rosario. My wife asked me one day, she said, do you like what you do? And at the time I was working for a company in Dayton, Ohio called Keymark Fundraising. And I was a sales rep, a sales trainer, a lot like I am today. And it was a product fundraising business with schools and nonprofit groups. And I was making really good money. You know, company car, benefits, life is good, except I wasn't having fun. And she knew it. And she said, you should get your real estate license. And my response was, heck no, I don't want to get my real estate license. No way. Well, here's what I've learned, guys. I gave in eventually because she didn't give up. So, you know, to all the guys in the room and all the guys on Zoom, when your wife says you should do this, just do it.
Oh my gosh.
You're going to do it eventually. Do it now and save some time. Besides, she's right. Monica was right. So I got my license and I told the owners of the company that I was working for, hey guys, I'm going to get my real estate license. I'm just selling real estate part-time. This is this is going to be some additional money to me. And besides, that business was really seasonal that I was in. So I had 2 or 3 months of the year where I didn't work. Now, the other 9 or 10 months, I worked my rear end off. And they were okay with that until they weren't. So I started with the Gary and Nikki team in Palm Harbor, Florida in August of 2002. And by March, April of 2003, I had sold 1 home. I'm crushing it, right? Sarcasm. And I get a call from the owner of Keymark Fundraising. John, we've decided, now we is a partnership, ownership in this fundraising company that I was working for. By the way, I was one of those partners. There were 3 of us. I had the smallest piece though. And we would be the other 2 owners. Decided that we don't like the fact that you're selling real estate part-time and we want you to stop. So John, my response was, well, I'm not going to stop. Their response was, if you don't stop, we're going to fire you. So I said, okay, let me think about it. Went home that night, prayed about it. Opened up my email and I had an email from Gary Keller. I'm thinking, holy cow, Gary Keller is sending me an email. Pretty cool. Well, the company at the time wasn't 180,000 agents, but we were probably about 23, 25,000 agents. It was smaller, but still pretty big. What I didn't know is he sent it to everybody in the company, and I'm thinking I'm the only one who got it. How cool is that? And Pierre, it's a story about a man who's climbing a mountain in the middle of the night. Now, why you would do that, I have no idea, but it's part of the story, so we're just going to go with it, Arenthia. And he's climbing this mountain, and he falls. Now, fortunately, he has a rope tied around his waist, and it saves him so he doesn't hit the ground, and he's hanging onto this rope. This is a really important part, so listen. He's hanging onto this rope out of fear. If he lets go of the rope, he's going to die. And he cries out, help, help, help. And a voice comes back and says, let go of the rope. And he's like, I'm not going to let go of the rope. I must have dialed the wrong number. And he cries out for help again. And the voice comes back, let go of the rope. He's like, no, I'm hanging. He's hanging onto this rope out of fear. If I let go of this rope, I'm going to die. The next morning, a group of hikers come along and they find him still hanging onto the rope, frozen, dead, 3 feet off the ground. And the caption under the picture in the story is, what ropes are you hanging on to out of fear? You're getting it, right, Arenthia? Yes. Speaking to you, right? Yeah. So it spoke to me. I'm like, it's a message from God, right from Gary Keller. I'm supposed to let go of this rope. The rope is Keymark Fundraising. I got it. I'm letting go of it. I'm going to become a full-time real estate agent. So I called the owners of the fundraising company, my partners, and they said, okay, well, you're fired. I'm like, cool. Not cool. The good news is I no longer own 2 cars because I have to return the company car to the dealership that day. The bad news is I have to go find another car. I also have to find a way to replace my $200,000 income that I'm using to support Colin, 5 years old, Lacey, 6 months old, our family, insurance, mortgage on a house we had just bought the year before. No, this was 4 years. We had bought 4 years before. And like most people, my lifestyle matched my income, right? So I'm thinking, no problem. I'm going to find a way to make it up selling real estate. Now, I had sold 1 home at the time, guys. All right, 1 home. And I went to see Mark Olish the next day, who was the team leader. He's the regional director today. And went in to see him the next day. I said, Mark, I need you to show me how to earn $200,000 selling real estate. Mark opened up the Millionaire Real Estate Agent to the economic model. And he said, cool, let's do it. Let me show you what you've got to do. So he draws these pictures and adds up these numbers and says, there it is. That's what you got to do. Now, at that point, I had sold one home. 6 months later, I had sold 60 houses.
Wow.
And more than made up the $200,000 that I lost. More than made it up. Life is good until it's not. In 2005, I decided that I was going to, 2006, excuse me, I was going to go out on my own, leave the Gary and Nikki team and start my own team. And I went into partnership with somebody that I shouldn't partnered with. Mistake number one. We started a company on borrowed money, lead with revenue. Mistake number two. And then the market shifted. And the house that we had purchased in 2005, smart real estate agent, right before the market crashed, was now worth half the money that we had paid for it. And we have to move because I live in an area where you could send your children to any school you wanted to. And right as my son was going into middle school, they changed that to you're going to the school where you live. And they rezoned the entire school system, and he was going to have to attend a school that I was not going to send them to. So we're selling the house, except it's worth half of what we paid for it. Mistake number three. And in a very short period of time, I found myself $500,000 in debt and a failed real estate business because I had a divorce with my partner. We were not seeing eye to eye. So I'm starting over. 2008, we're starting the Dietz team, $500,000 in debt. And by 2012, we had paid back all the debt. We're closing $25 million a year in sales. We're making $750,000 a year in gross income. We're in the top 5 in our local board of realtors. Life is good until it's not. In 2015, I decided that I was going to hang up my real estate career to become a team leader, and I moved to Coral Springs. A week after moving to Coral Springs, by the way, my last year in production, I made $900,000 as a real estate agent. My first year as a team leader, I made $72,000. And then a week after I moved to Coral Springs, Lacey is diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and is facing 52 weeks of chemotherapy. Crisis. Here we go again. And within 12 months, every penny that we had saved was gone. Everything that we owned was gone. And we're starting over. And by 2019, that real estate office that we started in 2015 with 62 associates was now over 300 agents. We had grown from $100 million in production our first year to more than $600 million by 2019. Profits had increased by more than 400%. And we're dug ourselves out of that hole again. Life is good until it's not. And in 2020, a new competitor came to town and started recruiting our top agents away. And then COVID happened. And here we are. Going through life doing this, jumping just this high until you fall in a hole that's really deep. And you have to find a way to jump higher to get out of that hole. That's how you grow. And that's where we are today. So there's my story. All right. So all of you are too young to remember Paul Harvey, but if I were to Paul Harvey this, I would say, and that's the rest of the story. All right, talk to me. What'd you hear? Never give up. Thank you. Becky. Pay attention to the voice of God. He's talking to you. How does God talk to you? Well, a lot of different ways. One of the ways is through others.
What I heard, John, is so much. You're just so inspiring. And I think that we all have something in our lives that we're going through. We've all gone through something. And like you always say, you're always preparing for something.